In the middle of the freezing San Francisco Bay sat a prison designed to destroy hope itself. Alcatraz Island was surrounded by violent currents, razor-sharp rocks, and water so cold it could kill a man within minutes. The guards called it the Rock. Prisoners called it Hell. Built on a lonely island far from the mainland, Alcatraz wasn't meant for ordinary criminals. It was built for the men nobody else could control: murderers, gangsters, and escape artists. The most dangerous prisoners in America were sent there to disappear. Every morning, the sound of steel doors echoed through the prison like gunshots. Silence was everywhere. Guards watched every movement, every whisper, every glance. The cells were tiny concrete cages barely large enough for a bed, a sink, and a toilet. Prisoners spent years staring at cold gray walls while the freezing ocean winds screamed outside. Some inmates lost their minds completely. Others stopped speaking altogether, because Alcatraz wasn't just designed to trap the body. It was designed to break the human mind and escape. That was considered impossible. The island sat more than a mile from shore, surrounded by deadly waters filled with crushing currents powerful enough to drag even strong swimmers out into the darkness. Guards believed no man could survive the crossing. Many prisoners believed it too, but not everyone. Deep inside cell block B, one prisoner was already studying the walls, watching, waiting, and planning the impossible. Deep inside cell block B, one prisoner was already studying the walls. His name was Frank Morris. Quiet, intelligent, and dangerous. By the time Frank Morris arrived at Alcatraz, he had already escaped from multiple prisons across America. Guards believed Alcatraz would finally stop him forever. They were wrong. Soon Morris recruited two brothers housed nearby, John Anglin and Clarence Anglin. The Anglin brothers weren't violent killers. They were bank robbers raised in poverty, known for staying calm under pressure. Together, Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin began planning the most famous prison escape in American history. Every single night after guards finished their patrols, the three men worked in complete darkness, using stolen spoons, scraps of metal, and even a homemade drill built from a broken vacuum cleaner motor. They slowly chipped away at the concrete hidden behind their sinks. Bit by bit, night after night, the sound of prison accordions during music hour helped cover the scraping noises echoing through the cells. Behind the walls was a narrow utility corridor never meant for prisoners to enter, but the men kept digging, crawling through dust, breathing crumbling concrete, hiding every trace before sunrise. Guards walked past their cells every day, never noticing the growing holes hidden in the shadows. Then the prisoners began preparing for something even more terrifying: the ocean. Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers stole over 50 prison raincoats and secretly stitched them together by hand. Piece by piece, they created a homemade life raft designed to survive the freezing waters surrounding the island. But their most disturbing creation sat directly on their beds. Fake human heads, built from soap, toilet paper, cement dust, and real human hair stolen from the prison barbershop. In the darkness, they looked real enough to fool the guards during nighttime checks. The escape plan took months. One mistake would mean solitary confinement or worse. Yet somehow the guards still saw nothing. While the prison slept, three men were preparing to vanish from the island nobody could escape. June 11th, 1962. The night of the escape had finally arrived. Inside Alcatraz Island, the prison lights dimmed as guards completed their final patrols. Prisoners rolled over in their beds. Steel doors slammed shut across cell block B. Then silence. In the darkness, three fake heads rested quietly on prison pillows. From a distance, Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin appeared to be asleep. But behind the cells, the real men were already moving. One by one, they squeezed through the holes hidden behind their sinks and crawled into the narrow utility corridor they had secretly built for months. Dust filled the air. Concrete scraped against their skin. Every sound felt deadly. If a guard heard them now, the escape was over. The men climbed silently through pipes, wires, and rusted metal shafts deep inside the prison walls. Above them, guards walked their normal routes, completely unaware that three prisoners were disappearing beneath their feet. Then came the hardest part: the roof. Using a homemade tool, the men pushed through a ventilator opening and climbed out onto the top of Alcatraz itself. Cold wind slammed into them instantly. Below them stretched the freezing black waters of San Francisco Bay. Violent currents crashed against the rocks surrounding the island. Searchlights swept slowly across the darkness. One mistake, and they would either be shot or dragged beneath the ocean forever. The three men carefully climbed down the side of the prison, carrying the homemade raft stitched together from stolen raincoats. Then they reached the shoreline. No alarms, no shouting guards, nothing. For the first time in Alcatraz history, The impossible was actually happening. Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers pushed their raft into the freezing water and disappeared into the darkness, and nobody saw them leave. Morning came slowly over Alcatraz Island. Guards began their normal routines. Breakfast carts rolled through the prison halls. Cell doors opened one by one across cell block B. Then a guard stopped suddenly outside Frank Morris's cell. Something felt wrong. Morris wasn't moving. The guard stepped closer and grabbed the prisoner's head. It crumbled apart instantly. Soap, toilet paper, human hair. The entire prison exploded into chaos. Guards stormed through the cell block screaming for lockdown. Sirens echoed across the island as armed officers searched every corridor, rooftop, and tunnel inside Alcatraz. Then they found the holes hidden behind the sinks. The prisoners were gone. Panic spread quickly through the prison. Search boats rushed into San Francisco Bay. Helicopters circled overhead. Spotlights scanned the freezing black water for bodies. But there was nothing. No raft, no prisoners, no bodies floating in the current. Only cold, empty ocean. The FBI launched one of the largest manhunts in American history. Investigators believed the men had drowned almost immediately in the freezing water surrounding the island. But there was one terrifying problem. No evidence ever proved it. Days later, pieces of the homemade raft were discovered drifting through the bay. A life jacket washed onto shore. But Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin were never found. It was as if the ocean had swallowed them whole, or helped them disappear forever. The official investigation lasted for years. The FBI searched coastlines, questioned witnesses, and studied the freezing currents surrounding Alcatraz Island. Most investigators reached the same conclusion. Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin had drowned somewhere in the black waters of San Francisco Bay. The currents were too powerful. The water was too cold. No ordinary person could survive it. Case closed. But the story refused to die, because strange things kept happening. Years after the escape, members of the Anglin family claimed they received mysterious flowers delivered anonymously to family funerals. Two unusually tall women wearing heavy makeup appeared briefly at one funeral, then disappeared before anyone could question them. Some relatives believed the brothers had secretly returned home. Then came the sightings. Witnesses across America claimed they had seen Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers living under false identities. Most reports were dismissed immediately, but one piece of evidence terrified investigators. In 1975, a photograph surfaced from Brazil. The image allegedly showed John and Clarence Anglin standing together on a remote farm more than a decade after the escape. Former federal investigators studied the photograph for years. Some believed it was genuine, others called it impossible. Then, decades later, the mystery became even darker. In 2013, police received a handwritten letter supposedly written by John Anglin himself. The letter claimed all three men had survived the escape from Alcatraz. It said Frank Morris had died years earlier. It claimed John Anglin was old, sick, and ready to surrender. Authorities tested the letter carefully, but they could never fully prove whether it was real. To this day, nobody knows what truly happened that night in 1962. No bodies were ever found. No graves. No final proof. Only theories. Some believe the ocean swallowed them alive within minutes. Others believe Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers achieved the impossible and vanished into history forever. But somewhere beneath the freezing waters surrounding Alcatraz, the truth still waits in silence. And one terrifying question remains unanswered. Did three men really escape from the island nobody could escape from?